I want to play my Fender Parallel Universe Jazz Tele. We're gonna find out if this thing's any good. This video here isn't like, a whole bunch of other videos out there where they talk for like 10 minutes and only ever play the guitar for like a minute, minute and a half. We're gonna be playing this thing a whole heck of a lot, but I'll still be talking about it. We're also going to be doing some comparisons with some other guitars. That's enough talking. Let's get after it. So now that we've heard the main sound sample here, I'm going to try and quickly go over the specs for this guitar, and then we'll get into 5 more sound samples. So starting off, we have a Jazzmaster in a Telecaster body. We have an ash body here that has gloss nitrocellulose finish on it. We have a mid-60s C-shaped maple neck with a bound rosewood fretboard. Don't worry, there's no fret nibs for people who don't like those, and dot inlays. On the front of the headstock here, you're going to see the typical Fender Jazzmaster logo, along with the Fender inline vintage style tuners. We have a master volume and a master tone, which is kind of set up really weird. I had to actually change the knobs around because they had where you have it set to 10, it would say 5. The pickups here are the pure vintage 65 Jazzmaster pickups. As far as our bridge, we have a Jaguar / Jazzmaster bridge with the nickel Mustang saddles. Of course, we have our vintage tremolo system. So in a nutshell, those are the specs. Let's get into 5 more sound samples. Just because it is this channel, the last one is going to be like a high gain one. right, so now that we've heard the 5 other sound samples there, it's at this point in the video where I always say the same thing. I'm doing this to sort of appease the internet. It is very beneficial, but I'm also trying to prevent tears from forming themselves into comments, because people complain if you don't play this in all 3 pickup positions in a clean setting. So here's that. I've always been someone that enjoys just a little bit of light drive over a more clean signal. To me, I feel that you kind of get a grasp over how the pickups actually react to a little bit of like light drive. So here's that. People love when you wiggle around the knobs, right? Let's go ahead and mess around with the volume control. That'll just be, because it's a master volume, I'll just use it like on the bridge. And then the tone controls, I'll go from the bridge to the neck, and I generally go in like sets of 2, so I'll go 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, and then off. I bet you thought I wasn't going to talk about this, right? I love this tremolo system here. It's meant to be played with a little bit of like sparkle and shimmer, so something like this. We have to remember that the 80s happened, so more than likely what would happen if you were to test this out in a store, this is how you would try it out. if it didn't stay in tune, you would say that the guitar sucked. And then, of course, you try and do a squealing dive bomb, and then just play a little bit of a lead like this. But as you kind of heard, it basically stays in tune. What ends up happening is over time, if you are actually reefing on this thing, it'll start to go flat. It's just natural, because it's not, like if you're doing dive bombs and stuff like that, that's not how this was designed. So that's generally what ends up happening. And normally this is the part of the video where I go, hey, you've heard this and this. Let's go ahead and grab some other guitars and we'll do a quick comparison. But with the Jazz Tele, I have found that if you actually play with the tone control for the like bridge or for the neck specifically, if you have that on full blast, it has a lot more snap. So I end up actually dialing things back to about 6 or 7 on the tone. That's generally where I keep it. So there's a couple of those sound samples that you listen to, that's where the tone was. So that's just, I guess, a comfort level, I guess, for me, but that's just where I find that this sounds best. So here's what it sounds like for the bridge and then the neck with full blast and then less. So you're basically going to be listening to the top end that's coming through, and it kind of cleans things up a little as well. So let's start out with some of the comparisons. So obviously the Jazz Tele here, it's a Telecaster crossed with a Jazzmaster, right? So let's grab an American Professional 2 Jazzmaster, and we'll just do the very simple, because there's a lot more options here on the Jazzmaster than on the Jazz Tele, because they've updated things. So they brought in sort of the rhythm circuit. It's not exactly the rhythm circuit, but it's sort of like it. And then there's actually a push-push to play them in series. Like, there's different options with it. So it's a little different. We're not going to do all that there because it would make this video way longer than it already is. But for the most part, a lot of people find this design here a little cumbersome. I find it fits really nice, although it plays a little forward, like on your left knee if you're right-handed. Whereas this is just a little more balanced, if you're familiar with like the Tele or Les Paul sort of style. Also, as far as weight, this has got a lot of weight to it because it's a lot, there's a lot more body to it, whereas this is routed out quite a bit more, and it's a little thinner as well. next comparison here, we're gonna grab a Strat. I bet you thought I was gonna say a Telecaster. We're gonna do that after. But most people automatically, when they think of one style of Fender guitar, they go, I wonder how it sounds in comparison to a Strat. Obviously, this is a Telecaster style. It's definitely a lot heavier than a Stratocaster style. This is a Rarities Stratocaster, so it's got different material and such to it. But it does have the pure vintage pickups in it as well. So let's just do a very quick 3 pickup position rather than the 5 position here. So I'll just go through the 3 different pickups and you can hear what it sounds like. Now the next most natural, which to most people might be number 2, comparison that you'd want to make would be to a Telecaster, right? Because this is a Telecaster body with a Jazz body innards, or Jazzmaster innards, whereas this is just an American Series 2003 Telecaster. So we're definitely looking at pure vintage versus the American Series lineup pickup. So not as vintagey. There's definitely a little bit of differences going on. Maple board, but still an ash body. So let's just do the 3 pickup comparison. Position. round things out just for fun, we'll do a comparison between the Jazz Tele with the Jazzmaster pickups and a 1956 VOS custom shop Les Paul. I'm partially colorblind and I try to use the AI color correcting, so if this shows up as green, it's both my fault and whatever robot dynasty is taking over the earth at this point. That being AI, I'm not quite sure. Do they have guns yet? Anyway, most people might be kind of curious how the Jazzmaster pickups sound in comparison to the P90. They're not exact. you'll hear this is punchy where this is snappy, if that makes any sense to you. As well, you're going to hear a lot more of the drive coming through here, so you hear a little more of the like light gain or whatever coming through, and this will be a little cleaner in comparison. So let's go ahead and take a listen. Alright, so those are all of the different sound samples, comparisons, wiggling around the knobs for those people at home, and the, you know, computer alien overlords or whatever of AI. I want to talk about this guitar here and whether or not I think it's a good guitar. Because with all the different sound samples, to you, you're able to hear if this guitar might work for you on a sonic level. But you can't reach in and grab the guitar and play it, right? That's really where my preferences might vary from yours. They might be the exact same. They might be similar. You might think I'm crazy. I think I'm crazy for the most part. But I want to talk about how this guitar feels to me. And the first thing I want to say is I'm a Les Paul player that fell in love with Strats and absolutely loves Jazzmaster pickups. Now, a lot of people, when they play custom shop Les Pauls, like the reissues, the VOS and the Murphy Labs and stuff like that, a lot of times they sort of liken the custom buckers to a Telecaster that is on steroids. Okay, I'm kind of likening things here to that because this shape is somewhat reminiscent. It's a single cut, right? So it's somewhat reminiscent to a Les Paul. And because of the thickness of the body here, it's not like just like a Jazzmaster where it's a little thinner and things are spaced out and stuff like that. It doesn't have that weird, to some cumbersome way that it actually feels when it's in your lap and everything. This just feels to me like I'm a lot more at home with it, especially with the fact that it has gloss nitro finish on it. A lot of the specs also list that the neck has a gloss nitro finish. It's actually a satin nitro finish. So I've had some Fenders in the past where it's been gloss nitro and they've oversprayed the heck out of it. And like I had a Telecaster, thin line Telecaster that if I played it for more than 10 minutes, like there'd be gunk coming off everywhere because they oversprayed. This is very, very well done. But to me, this is very familiar, weight-wise and kind of the shape-wise, the way that it like kind of rests on my knee and everything. And it has the Jazzmaster pickups, and of course, it has the Tremolo system that I absolutely adore. I'm not sure personally if I prefer a Maestro or the Jazzmaster. Well, it's just this system here. Both of them are very, very well done. Neither of them are really designed to be Floyd Rose or even like the tremolo system on a Strat. They're very, very different. They will go flat over time, especially if you're reefing on things. But to me, this is basically the absolute perfect form for a Jazzmaster because I'm a Les Paul player. Now, does that mean I don't want like a 59 or a 62 custom shop? I absolutely want one of those. That's actually, I wouldn't mind parting with this because of that and actually putting that towards picking up a 59 or a 62 custom shop Jazzmaster. Even a 65. Like I decided kind of with what I've been playing over the years, the 50s and early 60s, those were like just fantastic years. They work really well for my hands and everything. Just a lot of them use gloss nitro and stuff like that, so they just fit. Those guitars fit me really well. But for the time being, this is probably the perfect package for me as far as Jazzmasters go. A lot of people will be asking about tuning stability here. Not necessarily in like, you know, playing and bending and stuff like that, because that's just, a lot of that has to do with how you tune. Always tune up to pitch, never down to pitch. If you tune down to pitch, it'll start to go flat once you start bending. And then after you tuned up to pitch, tug on your strings. That kind of reseats them in the nut, and then it pulls any slack around the post. I generally do that like 3 times, and then it stays in tune for a long time. It's just same thing as Gibson's. Or any other guitar. I did that with Paul Reed Smiths and everything. But a lot of people are kind of curious over, does this have that weird thing like other tremolo systems, like a Strats and stuff like that, where this is not, I mean, this is kind of is, but it isn't really floating. But there's sort of a pressure base. So what ends up happening is, as you're, you know, tuning up, this sort of pulls forward a little. And you can kind of lock it into place because it does have a lock here. So that'll kind of prevent it from going up and down. It'll allow it to only go down, not up. But even then, it's not the best design. So yeah, you still want to tune from, you know, from the middle and work your way out, rather than tuning from, like, you know, top to bottom or bottom to tops like some people do. It's just good practice to start on the G string and then kind of work your way out. But if you're tuning up to pitch, like if you're tuning to standard, I tune in a whole bunch of different, as you heard. If you're tuning to standard with this, you're fine. It kind of has this really nice sweet spot for E flat standard and E standard, or like drop D. But once you start getting it into like drop C sharp and, you know, C, or like DADGAD, anything under, you know, regular DADGAD, then you kind of have to tune multiple times. So you're going to be working from the G string to the D string and back and forth. Once you get things, you know, each individual string in tune, you're going to have to tune again, because this will have moved. And it's when you're going to the lower pitches, or lower tunings, that's really where that starts to come into play. And with these being single coil pickups with different design, yes, you will notice if you're putting a lot of gain through it, you might have to angle yourself certain ways. There's going to be some feedbacking and some squealing going on. Noise gate may help you, it may not. I play this in a recording environment. Everything I do is in a recording environment. So, I mean, I don't deal with that as much, especially since my cabinets are all in separate treated rooms, which saves my ears and helps with a lot of the feedback issues. But there's still some squealing, and a lot of that can actually be resolved by bringing the tone control down to between 5 and 7. If you have it up on 10 and there's quite a bit of gain, or, you know, a nice amount of gain, you might end up with some squealing. That may resolve it for you. In the 60s C-shaped neck here, it's not super, super thick. It's not an Ibanez. I don't know why people sort of keep going back to thinking that Fender necks and even Gibson necks are Ibanez necks. That's just not how this works. There's always going to be some meat on the bone when it comes to the necks. So this is not as thick as the Deep C that you would find on the like American Professional 2s, but it's not as thin as, say, a slim taper for a Gibson. It is a little thinner here and just a slight bit thicker up at the lower frets. And the pickups here are what make this guitar. Absolutely make this guitar. This guitar here is far and beyond sound-wise, at least for me, than the American Professional 2. These pickups are just phenomenal. The low end that you can get from the neck is just very, very nice. It has this, it's a really nice low end that, if you dial the tone back a little more, it takes a little bit of that top end snap out, so it's not overbearing, and it just works with every amp that I have. It just sounds absolutely fantastic. Whereas the bridge pickup here is also great. For a lot of people, you can't really use the bridge pickup on a Strat without dialing that back like halfway, because it has that ice pick thing. The Jazzmaster bridge pickup does not have that whatsoever, but I still find dialing back that tone to about 6 or 7 will take off a little bit of that overbearing top end and just makes it just a great sound. You can play just about anything on it. Now, the Jazz Tele was treated as a vintage instrument. So it's got like some custom shop sort of adornments to it. But the big thing here to note is that the truss rod is not adjusted here. You can't do that. You got to take the neck off, and the truss rod adjustment is right there. So, I mean, I'm not sure. I have 2 Fenders right now that have that, and I have never once had to make an adjustment on these necks. Whereas when the seasons change, every single other Fender that I've owned, I've had to make little adjustments here and there to the truss rod. This and the Rarities that I showed in the video, not at all. The other thing to note here is we have vintage style tuners. That doesn't mean vintage button tuners. It means you got that weird slot up here rather than the hole that you feed things through. So you're going to be stringing your guitar differently. You basically want to look it up the first few times, because it's not just one of those things, put a single wrap and then, feed it through. This, you're sticking the top of the string here in, and then you're kind of bending it over and then tuning it, and then, like, you've got to have, sometimes you want a certain amount of spacing in between it, so you're going to cut your string before you actually put it in. And if you've never done this before and you're going to restring a guitar like this, just buy 2 sets of strings. You might screw things up. And again, this was a Fender limited edition. But if you look at Fender, what isn't? They make a whole bunch of different things. But we do have that limited edition badging here on the back of the neck plate, which some people really, really like, and sets it apart from other limited editions, I guess. But as far as limited edition Fenders that I've owned, and I've owned quite a few over the years, this and my Rarities that I showed in this video are just absolutely top notch. That's because they're vintage styled. Thanks for watching.